Okay, now that we have our lovely blank piece of paper, we are going to create some layers just so that we have them for use later. So this is the classes button, and this is the drop-down menu for using classes. We'll get to that in a minute. This is the layers button, and so if we click on this, looks like stacks of pieces of paper. You can see that we already have one layer called Design Layer 1. Let's just start with editing this one. So if we go ahead and have this selected in blue and we click Edit, we can go ahead and change the name of this layer. Let's call it Theater Architecture. I'm going to leave it at a 1-to-1 ratio for now, although I find that working in 1-to-48 is nice if I want to write myself any kinds of notes. I'll get into this more. For now, just leave it at 1-to-1, but you could change the scale. The rest of this is all higher level stuff that you don't even need to touch. So we're going to say OK. Now we're going to create a new layer. And this time we're going to call this Light Plot. Okay. And then we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call this Scenery. If I can type. And then we're going to create a new layer and call this Seating. Now the way things are currently is the seating is on the top and the theater architecture is on the bottom, as was explained in the video earlier, because one is like the thing that is highest in the air. So we want to switch this around. So we're going to grab a hold of this seating here and drag it down below. So you see what I did was I clicked on the scenery and then I drag it down. Does that make sense? So we're going to put it in the following order. Light plot on the top, scenery, seating, and theater architecture. So those are that's the order that you should have. Now we're going to say OK. And you can see that it's automatically made seating the active layer. And the reason for that is that here we've got a check mark. If at any point I wanted to make, say, scenery the main layer, all I have to do is click so that this check mark moves. I could also make something, turn a layer off, or make a layer gray if I chose to. So here I am with scenery. I can also change what layer I'm on with this drop-down menu. But for now, we're just going to say scenery. Now we're going to create some classes. So you can see this drop-down menu, we have the automatic dimension and none. Let's go ahead and click on the classes button. And if you look at the assignment, there are different categories of classes you're going to make. The first one is drafting with 5 different line weights, dashed with 7 different line weights or dashes and line weights, and finally color with 8 different colors. So we're going to just go ahead here and start with new. And so we're going to start with drafting. In order to separate out menuing, as was explained in one of the earlier videos, you have to write the word drafting and then put a dash, and then we're going to say 1 point very light. I'm going to say OK. This kind of annoys me, so I'm going to edit it. And it's beach balling me. It's time for an upgrade. I'm going to put a space here. While I'm editing this class, you can see all of the different options I have here. So the thickness, the one that we're most concerned with right now, is at 0.5. That's probably pretty good for a very light line. We're going to say OK. Now I want to create a new layer. This time I have to type drafting again. Dash 2 point light. And say OK. And you can see how this is now nested below the drafting. And I want to minimize the drafting tab, and it says you can expand and collapse subclasses using Option plus click, and you can expand and collapse all classes by using Shift plus Option plus click. Good to know. Eventually I'll get rid of those boxes so they don't pop up and tell us things, but I think they're very useful for now. So now you can see that very light and light are exactly the same. So I need to edit this. Hopefully it won't beach ball me for as long as it did last time. There we go. I'm going to make this 0.13. And so on and so forth. So what you're going to do is keep putting these in until they look like this. Until it looks like this. So what I've done in the drafting section is I have made sure that each one of these is a step darker by default on this list. So it goes from 0.5 to 0.35. And the reason why I'm numbering this specifically for drafting is because it's sort of like when you order spicy food. A 1 is pretty mild and a 5 is pretty spicy. So that way you can sort of see that. I'm also having you number color and dashed simply to help yourself differentiate between the different ones. After this project you can do this however you want to do this, however it makes sense. However, for this project I want you to do it specifically this way. So now I've created all of the classes that are specified on your sheet, but none of them have been changed. So we're going to go to gray dash and we're going to edit this. So what we can do is change the color to a gray color. There's a default one right here. I'm just going to go with the default this time. But we also want to make sure that the dash shows up. And so here where it says style solid for the fill, we're going to leave that alone because this is for the fill, okay? But it says style solid here for the pen. So the pen is the actual mark. So now we're going to say line type, and it's going to give us this menu right here. There's this dashed menu, right? And so if you click on this, there are all kinds of options that are possible here, and these are editable, but we're going to go with short dashed. Now I give you creative freedom on the rest of your dashes. They can be however you need to. You're just going to adjust what kind of dash. I don't want to see them all having the same dash. They must have different dashes that correspond with the kind. And then different thicknesses based on what they are. So gray dash, we're going to leave this at a 0.5. We're going to say OK. For something like a center line section, this one should be red. So we're going to say edit. And as you saw on my computer draftings, it's red. It's a convention that we use. But there's no red here. So you've got to click on any of these pick a color options. There's the wheel, which is one of my favorites. If it's all black like this, you just have to run the slider this direction a little bit, as far as you want to, right? Don't forget that you are drafting on a white surface, not a black one. So you're going to want things that you can see. I'm going to say OK. There we go. We have a red one. I'm going to make it a little beefier since this is a centerline section. Maybe about a 0.18. Sounds good to me. Also needs to be dashed in a centerline section dash. Let's see here. There's many things we could do. Let's do this one. I'm going to say okay. You can see that it changes on there. So you just need to go through. If it's a medium dash, you probably want to make it a little thicker than a 0.5, and you probably want to find a dash that's a little larger, and so on and so forth. For the colors, this is a little easier. So if it's red, you're going to say, well, we already did red, so let's do a different color. Let's do green. I'm going to say edit. You're going to go here, maybe slide this down. Maybe you see one down here you're already like, oh, okay, that feels all right. You're going to say okay. And you're going to say okay. And there you go. All of these can stay 0.5 if you like. They can always be changed later, and it will change everything in the document that's set to be that. And that is your assignment. Don't forget to save.